Good afternoon, folks. Eagle Spitz here on Desert Island Vids over on Punk for the Homeless Eclectic Virtual Festival. With me, I've got Church from Extinction Rebellion. Hello, mate.
Hello, Eagle. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How's it going over there?
Not too bad. Thank you for inviting me. It's really good of you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll kick straight in. So, give us a brief history of Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion, funnily enough, the first rebellion was this month, a year ago, and there was a call out in the previous year to kind of get people involved in it, and so there was another recent rebellion in October. So it's pretty much a year old, just over. So happy birthday. So yeah.
Okay, so let's sort of take it at sort of basic level. Just assume our viewers know nothing about Extinction Rebellion. What the hell's Extinction Rebellion?
Extinction Rebellion recognised that, initially it was a handful of people that came up with the idea, and it sort of blossomed from there, and it's grown into a movement which is now global, in dozens of cities and towns around the world. And really the idea behind it was the fact that governments globally aren't really addressing the issue of climate change. Not only that, it's also about providing a framework whereby we could actually really survive the impacts of climate change, particularly in a lot of poorer countries. And this framework's not in place. I mean, climate change is it's inevitable anyway. We can slow it down, but and hopefully. The idea behind Extinction Rebellion is to by 2025 is to have zero carbon emissions. But the idea really is to kind of get politicians and people to really declare this as an actual emergency, and actually this is a massive crisis, and we really need to be addressing this. And so Extinction Rebellion was really formed to highlight this, because it wants to tell the truth. It wants to tell the truth to people. It wants the media and the states and the whole infrastructure to tell the truth to people in a format that they understand as well, not just highbrow thinking, but in a format that working class people understand, and just really tell the truth of the situation. This isn't just a personal opinion. It's not an opinion of XR. This is world scientists telling us that it's fact that we are destroying our planet, and really to act now, and just get on with it and treat it like a crisis. And it's an interesting movement because it involves everybody. It's very inclusive. It leaves party politics at the door, because party politics is very divisional, and it leaves it accepts people for who they are as well, which is really, really nice. It accepts our differences, and it welcomes everybody.
Cool. Because I remember the days when activists were those guys with sort of mohawks or hippies and a lurcher and stuff, but Extinction Rebellion seems to have gotten away from that, which was
I mean, that's right. I mean, obviously you're a lot older than me, Eagle. I'm only joking. But basically, in the 80s, for example, being a vegan or vegetarian or having certain lifestyles was like it was the vein of the eccentric. I mean, it was very fringy, and it's a lot more socially acceptable now, and I think people are really catching up with common sense ideas and common sense politics, because it is common sense to think about people it is common sense to have a meaningful relationship with other people, to think about the impacts of the way you live on the environment, your relationships with animals, our relationships with food, everything. You know, we need to start thinking about how we live our lives. And you know, initially, obviously, you know, politics has been around for hundreds of years, but subculturally, in the 60s with the hippies, and in the 70s with the punks, and then even in the early 90s with you know, like things like the anti-roads protests. It always seems to be a fringy bunch of people doing this. But now it's people are starting to think, well, hang about, these people were right, you know, these people are okay. But I think that the difference is, the key point is that science is now backing us up, and that's a difference. It's not just a philosophy or an idea. Science is backing us up, and the evidence is there. The evidence is in front of us. You know, Australia, 12.5 million square kilometers burning down, constant fires in California, food shortages, droughts, floods, and so forth. You know, it's visibly there. We can't argue.
Okay. So what's your first tune today, mate?
My first tune, my first tune is I really like a band called Terrestrials, and I think they're a fantastic band, and they've done a lot for the protest scene, and you know, and the subculture scene and anti-fascist scene, all sorts of different scenes, and I think they, you know, they deserve a bit of a shout out. You know, a lot of people know them in the punk scene, obviously, and the anarcho scene, but I think they deserve a lot of credit. They, you know, not only have they done some great things, but they're fantastic musicians. So my first track would be Boundaries by Terrestrials, and the reason why I chose that is because it really kind of breaks down the boundaries between people, and it's a beautiful song, and it's really uplifting, and I just totally dig it.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a great band indeed. Viewers, you can see those in the links to the video we will be we'll be posting up. So, yeah, we're better fans of Inner Terrestrials, Punk for Homeless. We had Jay Terrestrial doing as a solo set from his caravan the other week on our virtual festival, which went down really well. So, Extinction Rebellion, obviously, the world seems to be a little bit greener since humanity's been stopped and made us stay in a bit. What are the Extinction Rebellion's plans for?
It's an odd one, because basically we're in a really interesting time, because basically people are seeing the positives of the shutdown, and I am talking on behalf of Extinction Rebellion, but at the same time, you know, some of this is my personal opinion too, and everybody's voice is valued, and everybody's contribution is valued. So I apologize openly if anything I say doesn't necessarily line up with what other people think in XR. But generally speaking, I think the general gist I'm getting from people, and from what I'm hearing on a kind of street level with XR, I think they really want to focus on the positives. I can't say that for everybody, but generally this is the feeling I get. And the positives are, like you said, you know, the air's clearer, we can hear the birds, there's less pollution, you know, like as you can see on the news above China, there's less pollution. But also, you know, I think the community response is a massive thing. It's a massively positive thing. People connecting together and looking out for each other. And I do feel that the state has neglected their duties towards us in doing that. Totally, they haven't been prepared for it, and they've been slow to respond. And it's like most crises that have happened, like from New Orleans to Grenfell, lots of crises, there seems to be a very, very slow response from the state, and it's always community that sorts themselves out. And I think that people should be aware of this. There's some people talking about the parallels with climate change and COVID. You know, we're going through a crisis at the moment, and we're struggling. I mean, what kind of struggle will we have if we suddenly start running out of food due to climate change? I do know a lot of people, they don't want to focus on COVID too much because people's minds are very absorbed with family and worry about family members and about their own situations. So we have to be very sensitive with this issue. We can't piggyback on COVID just to get our party politics across. So we have to be very careful and just be very sensitive that maybe climate change isn't on people's minds, but at the same time, when we haven't gone away, and we're strong as ever, and there's massive solidarity, and you haven't seen the last of us. We're still at it strong, and we're going to be back.
Oh, so what's your next tune then, man?
My next tune. My next tune is by a band called Tonstein Scherben, who were around in the very late 60s, 1970, very early 70s. And you know, I like my punk like yourself, but my music tastes are all over the place. Tonstein Scherben are actually an anarchist band, and they were very, very political in 1970. And it's quite interesting because when you think about people like Jimi Hendrix and the Doors, I mean, this is the kind of style of music they played. The track I'm choosing is called Macht kaputt was euch kaputt macht, which means break that what breaks you, roughly translated. And it's an anti-capitalist song, and it talks about the materialism, about, you know, buying cars and all the rubbish that we have, and it's saying break what breaks you, so destroy the things that break you. But it's from what I understand, my German's not great, but I understand enough German. But it's not violence against people. It's more anti-capitalist against property, and just saying these things are just, you know, just basically Abfall, as they say in German, Müll, which means rubbish. So that's my next track, and you know, to be honest, you know, because they speak in German as well, you know, a lot of people, there's a massive bubble whereby English is the language that's used in punk, you know, and that's what's heard. And there's so many bands throughout Europe that sing in other languages, like Sin Dios, and bands like Tonstein Scherben from the early 70s. There's so many bands that are coming out with some great tunes, but it's the language barriers that are actually preventing their voices being heard.
Okay. Well, yeah. So check that one out. It'll be on the links, viewers. So, how would people get involved with Extinction Rebellion? I mean, it's not something you'd read in the newspaper and answer an advert, is
it? We do. People, I think, you know, the coverage we actually got on the streets was a massive thing in April of last year, and I also think as well is, you know, we got a real public face because of that, and it was a massive turning point as well, because it really put climate change as an issue on the map, and it pricked up people's ears, and they thought, you know, who are these people? My first experience was a year ago when I got involved. So I got involved in the first rebellion in April, and I was going to go up to London for the rebellion, and then it got shut down on the last day when I was heading up. And then I decided to check these people out, and they're such wonderful people and diverse people. They're from all kinds of backgrounds, and they've all got different histories, and they're from all different kinds of occupations. It's very, very inclusive. There's criticism that it's not inclusive of working class people and people of ethnic backgrounds. But I really believe that's not the case. I just think that's a reflection of society. You know, it's a reflection of how we are divided in our communities by class, by the areas we live in. Even if you look at the gentrification going on in London and places like that, we are forced into be separated from each other, and we welcome people from all backgrounds, and but it is difficult to connect to these people if they don't live in your areas, if they're not directly in your workplace or directly in your social circles. So I don't really accept that criticism, and we want to break down these artificial boundaries that have been created that separate us, and then and through that everybody's inclusive and everybody's voices are heard. So yeah, and I was just attracted to the no politics agenda. You know, it's beyond politics. I've got certain political beliefs which I leave at the door. We spent too many years squabbling over our party politics viewpoints, and when we should be really kind of thinking about the bread and butter of bread and butter issues, like, you know, food security, things like the climate, our relationships with other people, having healthy relationships with people, relationships that prioritize people and animals and our environment.
Okay. So Extinction Rebellion is a do non-violent direct action, don't you?
Totally.
How much of that is influenced by people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi and people?
Well, a lot. It's interesting because a lot of the people that set up XR or came up with the concept, they really researched political groups and political movements from the past, whether it was suffragettes to to apartheid, to every kind of movement, and they came up with an idea, and I can only imagine why they did that, and that was because they wanted to kind of scoop the positives from these movements. You know, I strongly believe in non-violence, but I do recognise too, and this is my own personal opinion, that states can be violent towards its people, and there's arguments that how do you oppose violence? You know, and people go, how can you do that? But my standpoint really is non-violence. I think it's the way to go. You know, we have to create change through dialogue, and we have to create change through forgiveness to some degree, and we just got to move on together. And you know, there are psychopaths out there and some really nasty bastards, excuse my language, but the thing is, it's about finding allies. You know, it's about finding allies in government. It's about finding allies in our community, whereby we can work together to create a kind of world and a kind of future.
Okay, nice. I guess that brings us to your last tune.
A bit of a selfish one, really. A very good friend of mine called Nick Wilsden, he died about 3 years ago, and I was quite angry because he was on his push bike, and he came off of his bike outside of Bristol A&E. He got hit by a van, and because of lack of staffing, this was in all the national papers. Basically, he was on the road for many hours, and he had a brain injury and he died, and that really upset me. And I lost him very, very suddenly like that, and it wasn't very nice. And I was meant to go down, and he was in a wonderful band called Caligo Jack. He was a wonderful character. He's very well known in Bristol and Brighton, and nationally and internationally. And he worked in the Palestine as well, on the refugee camps, and he did many great things, and he lived a fantastic life. And I was meant to see him, but because we've got this COVID thing going on and there's a bit of a lockdown, I can't visit him. I was going to visit his grave for the first time since he died, and I was really looking forward to it, and I can't. And one thing that joined us together was music, and we were massive Jethro Tull fans, and there's not many of them around. So my last tune is Jethro Tull, and it's Dr. Bogenbroom, and I just chose that track because for some weird reason it just uplifts me, and I just sing when I hear it. I just totally love it. There's no particular reason than that, and it's just really hats off to Nick Wilsden.
Okay, well, viewers, make sure you check out his videos, which will be in the links. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, not a problem. Fantastic, and big up you guys, you and Rachel, for doing a fantastic job with Punk for the Homeless. I mean, you guys are just inspirational, and total respect, and keep supporting these guys, people.
Cheers. Take care, buddy.
All right, you look after yourself.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.